All right, welcome back to another edition of the New Mexican Sports Podcast. I'm your sports editor, Will Weber, as always, joined by James Barron. James, you're not eating today, which is highly disappointing.
Actually, I ate just before I got on here. Actually, I ate right when I first got here, and Matt got on too late. I just finished my orange. So
there you go.
yeah, so there you missed out on the action.
Well, we are a day removed from the end of the college basketball season, but of course, it's never really the end of college basketball season because we're recording this on Tuesday morning,
yeah,
April 7th, which the transfer portal for NCAA opens today. UNM has already lost 2 players into the portal. And here's the interesting thing about the transfer portal is no one has access to it except for coaches and administrators from each school, and then the NCAA. The media can't get into it. The public cannot get into it. So we have no idea who is in the transfer portal, how many names are in there, and what their status is. And so I've asked around about that. Like, what does the transfer portal actually look like? Is it this enormous data spreadsheet with names and phone numbers, and does it list their agents and how much money they made? And it's weird how secretive people are about how the transfer portal works. Because I always thought if a guy from Holy Cross throws his name in there and Eric Olin is interested in him, does he just find out through Twitter or word of mouth? Or does he see this guy's name on a list, and how does he contact him? And no one says anything. So I would love to get my hands on – look, James, I know you're computer savvy. Maybe you could hack into the transfer portal and find out for us. Tell us how it works.
Yeah, I'm not that savvy, man. I'm not that good. I'll leave those details to our producer, man. He's probably better at it than I could.
That's also
he could get closer to hacking in than I ever could.
Yeah. Well, between when we do our little commercial break here, we'll ask Matt to do something for us. But Tomislav Buljan, he's in the portal. He announced that right after the Lobos. I think he probably announced it before he took his uniform off after the loss to Tulsa.
Yeah, he was probably walking off the court as the seconds ticked off, saying, "I'm out."
And that was the least surprising move of all, because look, he's a freshman. He was a true freshman, but he's 23 years old, and he was honored on senior night for the Lobos.
Yeah, he wasn't coming back.
Yeah, I asked Eric Olin, is like, he's got to be the first freshman in school history and NCAA history to be honored on senior night. So how would you classify him, as a freshman or as a senior? He's like, well, both. So we don't know. So him jumping into
he's a senior.
So
he knows he's not coming back.
He jumped into the portal. So I don't know if it means he's got more eligibility, if he's got 3 years left, 1 year left, who knows? But that doesn't surprise me, because as fine as an institution as the University of New Mexico is, he did not come here to attend the Anderson School of Management. He came here to make money.
Yes, he did.
And he can go somewhere else.
Yeah,
he can make some money going somewhere else, and he will get a lot of money once he leaves UNM. So didn't surprise me in the slightest that he left.
Yeah. And with that said, as we were talking about before we got on here, I mean, they've got one player coming back, or coming, not necessarily out of the transfer portal, but obviously they found some size to kind of offset what they're losing with both Buljan and Rock leaving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, JT Rock's kind of surprised me. And the reason being is he did probably develop more than any other player on that roster this year, because he got here, he seemed kind of like just a big, tall guy. But he had a 3-point shot, but he developed it, he fine-tuned it. But more than that is he got tougher in the low post.
Yeah.
He didn't get to play a lot because when he was on the floor, Buljan was sitting out, and Buljan got the bulk of the minutes, probably 75% of the minutes. And that always led me to think that, look, from where I sit, I'm never wrong as a media member. I can solve all the world's problems with my laptop as I'm watching other people run around, do their jobs. So that said, I always thought that this team was probably not handled particularly well, in the sense that you had 2 proven big men. You could have played them at the same time. And through the entire course of the season, that only happened, I think, once or twice all year, where they're on the floor at the same time. But Eric Olin wanted to go with a 4-guard, 1-post lineup. And it was to the detriment of JT Rock's development. So him jumping in the portal kind of surprises me, because I thought once Buljan left, Rock probably saw an opening, but he chose, you know what, he'll go somewhere else, and he'll make money too.
Yep. And I mean, let's be honest. I mean, a lot of times, sometimes these guys go into the portal to see what their value is, and they realize, oh, hey, it's the value isn't that much different than what I'm getting at UNM. So I might as well stay at a place where I'm comfortable. And especially with Boyan leaving, that opens up that 4 or 5 spot there. And for a guy like him, especially given the experience that he has, I mean, he could slide right into the starting lineup right there. So
Yeah.
there are some benefits to that, but we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah. So last week I spent the entire week in the city of Indianapolis for the NIT Final Four and then the actual Final Four, and that was a weird experience for me because first of all, I never seen anything like that. I'm kind of on the New Mexico island like most of us are, in the sense you get this insulated view of the world based on what you see here in New Mexico and Santa Fe and Albuquerque, but the chance to go out to Indianapolis and watch a game, the Final Four, with 72,000 people in an NFL stadium. My first thought was, and I actually wrote a column about this for Sunday, as I'm sitting there watching the first game, I'm thinking, this stage is entirely too big for UNM. I cannot ever envision a day where New Mexico or New Mexico State makes it as far as the Final Four for the NCAA tournament. Because first of all, it isn't an NFL stadium, and it's this super airy, kind of cartoonishly expanded environment. It just seems way too big for what college basketball teaches us that it is, which is kind of like this confined, intimate, traditional space. And all of a sudden you're playing it in a building big enough to fit, the space shuttle in there with enough room. So it just seemed different, because then you watch these teams come in. When I was there, we had access to all the teams outside their locker rooms, and just watching these guys are all physical specimens. And you think all 4 of those teams probably invested $10 to $20 million in NIL towards those players. UNM just cannot afford to do that. These guys are all chiseled, fine-tuned athletes, where UNM, you just kind of, maybe you get a Thomas Bouillon, maybe you get a Jake Hall, but you just don't have that other roster spot to pay for the other guys like that. So that's kind of my thought on that.
Yeah, you're kind of shelling out for that one guy, really, to kind of be the feature player in that, on your roster. It's either that, or you try to spread it out over a bunch of, 2 and 3 star type guys, in the hopes that one of them, kind of develops or breaks out, and becomes a star. Not to say that one way is better than the other, but I mean, there's different ways to skin a cat. But I think for UNM, I mean, obviously, I mean, they really value, I think, the star power. I mean, when you look at even when Patino was here, I mean, you had Donovan Dent, you had Jamal Mashburn Jr., you had guys with name recognition, Toppin, that people kind of rallied around. And, for a year, it works out great. But obviously, the flip side of that is once they raise their value, they become unaffordable for your program. Yeah,
which is, it's kind of sad, because it really kind of gives you an indication of where UNM is in the pecking order of college sports. And it's funny, while I was out there, I ran into, it was weird how many people I saw that I kind of had crossed paths with in the past. And one of them was Matt Ensor. Matt used to be the sports information director for UNM basketball. He went to Arizona, did the same thing at that school. And now he's the commissioner of communications for the Big 12. And so, Matt's a big shot. He knows, he's the commissioner of communications to the best basketball conference in the country. And we're kind of reminiscing, talking about New Mexico and where they are in terms of the grand scheme of things. And it's apparent that there's the haves and then there's everyone else. Yeah. It's not necessarily the have-nots. It's just, there's a select group of maybe 15 to 20 schools in the country that can routinely get to the Sweet 16 and the national championship level. And every now and then you might get a Wichita State or a Loyola or even a San Diego State sneak in there, but sustainability favors the people with the giant pocketbooks, and UNM just does not have that. And it's kind of sad to think about it,
It kind of is. It used to be that you could always, before NIL, the smaller schools, mid majors, actually had a fighting chance. I mean, if you developed a guy that became, a stud, chances were he was probably going to stay with your program for 3 or 4 years at least, at the very most, and you'd be able to develop around him. But now it's like you get a guy that suddenly blows up and has himself an 18, 19 point, season, point a game season, and they're gone. because they know that they can make more somewhere else, unless, I don't know if I want to call them crazy, but maybe they're a little loyal. Maybe they realize, hey, I enjoy what I have here. I don't, money's not, the object that maybe it is to everybody else, but those people are far and few between.
Yeah, of course everyone beats this drum to death, but the changes do need to happen for the way that transfer portal and the way coaches can just up and leave. Because right now, starting this morning, every single player in the country is a free agent.
Essentially,
If you choose to stay, then you stay. And you look at the Final Four rosters that were built through, really even the top seeds like Duke.
Yeah.
Duke's entire starting five was that those were players who started their careers at Duke. So they got there, they've stayed there, they've got sustainability. They don't have to worry about the transfer portal stuff. But Michigan, their entire starting lineup were guys who transferred in from other schools.
First national championship team to do that.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that you can just go out and buy the best talent that you can and win a national championship. And look, UNM is going to have an entirely different roster. As weird as this season was for them with 14 new players, or 13 new players, what they had, and a new coaching staff, you're going to have mostly the same coaching staff and maybe 2 or 3 players. But that team next year is going to be entirely different.
Entirely different. Yeah.
And
actually wrote my column about that. It's just a question of who do you want to keep? And I think you've identified it, and I think everybody else has identified it. You want to keep Jake Hall, especially if his brother is going to be coming. You want to keep Uriah Tenet, just because he really developed into a solid point guard for him. So if you get those 3 guys there and Dax to come in, that's a pretty solid backcourt right there. That's a pretty solid foundation that you can build around, and then you can fill those spots. Obviously, they need size because you lose Rock, you lose Bullion. Obviously, they've got the Austrian that's coming in, the 6'9" kid, but you're still going to need some depth, and there's no telling who else is going to leave. But with that said, it's almost like you need 2 or 3 guys to say, okay, this is my foundation. Let's see what we can find out there, and who can we attract that would be interested in coming to UNM.
Yeah, it's just such a bizarre time for UNM athletics because, look, no matter how you slice it, going into next season for football, UNM fans and the entire program can kind of puff out their chests and kind of be a little arrogant because by all stretches of the imagination, UNM could and maybe should go at least 9-3 or 10-2 next year with the schedule that they play.
Yeah,
they will be the favorites in the Mountain West Conference next season. And you think if they can go in there and just not get their clocks cleaned by Oklahoma in week 2, if they can hang with the Sooners on the road and then make hay in the Mountain West, that's a team that could conceivably push for a playoff spot, which is just unbelievable to think about.
Yeah. I mean, I think 2 years ago, that wasn't even that, 3 years ago. I mean, we were looking for somebody just to get them to 500. And now, I mean, here you go, Will. You've raised the bar, man. You're just like all these other Lobo football fans that were around when Rocky Long was there. It's like, oh, well, we just won 9 games. Well, we should be competing for conference championships now. It's like, whoa, dude, whoa.
Yeah, well, those are back in the days when BYU and Utah were still in the conference. This is a watered down conference.
You're right about that. That's very true. But
weak. Yeah, Boise's gone. All Air Force is still in your league, but they're terrible.
Yeah.
The most challenging games they have on their schedule for next season: Hawaii, which is on the road.
Yeah,
they got UNLV at home, and then North Dakota State.
North Dakota State. Yeah, that's what I was going to say, and that's a home game here.
Yeah,
maybe Nevada.
Well, Nevada possibly, and so UNM's looking at a very successful season where basketball, this program that you've leaned on for consistency, and by and large they were pretty consistent. They won 26 games this year. They got to the semifinals of the NIT, which is a great season for them. But football, for once, I think this is the most optimistic a Lobo football fan has ever had a chance to be in the history of the program. They're thinking, we're going to be good this year. We have a shot to be pretty good.
I think you hit the nail on the head. And the funny thing is, much the same way what you're talking about with football, basketball is kind of in the same boat. I think regardless of how the roster changes, I think there's a conception out there that people feel like, considering who's left and who's remaining, UNM, regardless of who they have on the roster, should still be a contender for the conference title. Now the issue is, when you had teams like Boise State and San Diego State, in Utah State. The cream was pretty thick at the top of the conference, and you could conceivably look at maybe three or four bids coming out of it. Now without them, this is probably a one, maybe a two bid league conference, and so that puts more pressure on not just winning the regular season title, but you have to win the conference title too, or the conference tournament title, because there's no guarantee that there's that luxury of like, okay, if we can just get to the championship game or get to the semifinals, and we win 27, 28 games, we're getting in. No, that's not who you are anymore.
Yeah, and also at the Final Four, after the semifinal win for UConn, one of the questions posed to Dan Hurley was, well, look, you beat Illinois during the regular season. You had a shot to play them in the semifinals. And he said, well, next year we're going to give Illinois another shot to play us because we're going to go to Chicago and play a non-conference. But that's the thing is we're at a place with this program where we don't have to play anybody else other than the elite teams in the country. And so any dreams that UNM fans might have of maybe scheduling UConn, going to Storrs, Connecticut,
those days are long gone.
There's those quad 1 and quad 2 opportunities are gone forever. I think you might get one of these MTEs, these tournaments in Cancun or somewhere where you might run into a team from the Big 10 or Big 12 and say, well, look, we played Missouri. Yeah, well, great. That's nice. But these other teams are doing it. It's kind of becoming this incestuous idea of scheduling for basketball. And kind of tying that back into football is the path to get to a national championship level, at least be in the conversation, is now shorter for football than it is for basketball, because the NIT is kind of becoming the island of misfit toys for all the mid-majors. Whereas football, if you win the Mountain West and you're 11-1, they got to take a group of 5 team in the playoffs. And if
so you got to who's it going to be, and you're basically fighting 4 or 5 other schools for that one spot.
Exactly. And so if they win that conference, and if they play well and they don't get smoked by Oklahoma, you can make the argument they have a better shot of being in the 12-team playoff than UNM does in a 68-team NCAA tournament. Where if UNM's lucky, they get in for the basketball thing, they might win a game and then just get knocked out in the second round. You think, well, what a great season that was. But you got to the round of 32, and you're thinking, it's like when Pitino took the team and they won at Marquette a couple years ago. You think, oh, that was a great season. We got to the second round and played Michigan State. Yeah, but no one's going to remember that. And no one remembers that New Mexico won a game in the tournament a couple of years ago.
Yeah, so, that kind of becomes the high watermark for the program, which is funny to say, because that was the problem for the program for the longest time. People were like, when are you going to get to the Sweet 16? And now the expectations have changed, and let's be honest, they've lowered. And now suddenly it's like, oh, if we can get to the second game, that's a great season. And it's like, wow, when did that become kind of the measuring stick or the bar? Yeah. Because for the longest time, Lobo fans, especially from when we were growing up, I mean, the goal wasn't to get to the second round. It was to get to the Sweet 16 and maybe make a deep run. Yep. And now, I mean, it's again, it's kind of like where UNM was 30 years ago when Rudy Davlos turned down the Big 12. It's like you missed your chance. Now, that ship's gone, and in this new reality, you have to realign your expectations.
Yeah, that's the thing is, you look at what UNM has to work with. And granted, they're planning to build essentially what is a new stadium for football. And they want to develop the area around the pit and around the football stadium. They're trying to do all these little things. Like they've improved the baseball facility. They've improved softball. But everything about UNM kind of speaks to being a mid-major. Like they're falling into that role where when the Mountain West was still kind of the configuration it is right now, it's about to splinter apart. Maybe you had a shot, you could kind of compete at that level. But it feels like they're slipping away from that. And it's not to say it's bad leadership or bad decision making. It's just the nature of business with the transfer portal, where you're allowed to flush your toilet every single day and use your income to pay these guys millions of dollars. Like, I defy any Lobo basketball fan to show up to a basketball practice someday and see the cars that these guys are driving. I've said this before. Yeah. But they drive nicer vehicles and they wear nicer clothes than any of us schmucks will ever have a chance to wear.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right about that. Yeah. And unfortunately, this is the college athletic world that we know of it now. It's very cannibalistic. I mean, it's really what it is. Yeah, everybody's eating each other because it's all about survival, and that's all that matters. And the people that, and really, the ones that get hurt the most are honestly the fans and the supporters, because more is asked out of them, because you got to pay more for ticket prices, because you got to be able to generate more revenue, so that way the programs can compete. And then for the longest time, because the football program wasn't carrying its weight, the basketball program is having to ask to do more, and people had to spend more money because it was the only sport that really was generating any kind of revenue. And you kind of get caught up in this vicious cycle. And yeah, it's great that football's doing better now, and maybe it can help contribute a little bit more, but still everything goes through basketball. I mean, until we get to that point when UNM is maybe every 5 years or so getting into the college football playoffs. I mean, you just have to presume that basketball is going to be the heavyweight here until proven otherwise.
When I was in Indianapolis, there was a story that ran right when I first got there, talking about Nebraska's athletic program, about how their football generated all kinds of revenue, most of the majority of the revenue for that athletic department. And then men's basketball and volleyball both turned a profit in Nebraska. Yeah. But all the other sports combined, the revenues came nowhere close to matching the expenses. Yeah. And so that said, Nebraska was operating in a deficit that just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, because now you're having to pay these athletes, because you take the revenues that you get and then you have to give it to them. Yeah, which I think is fair. You should be paying athletes, but these guys are making more than their coaches. A lot of them are making more than their coaches. It's not necessarily
crazy, man. That's so weird. That's so weird to say after so long. Being in a system where the coaches just they got their 6-7 figure job, a year jobs, and athletes were scuffling.
Mm-hmm. Well, in like a player like Philip Borovichinen, who was on the Lobo basketball roster last year, the subject of him came up when I was in Indianapolis too. And he left to go to Xavier, in which kind of makes sense. You want to follow your coach, you're going to do that. But yeah, again, NIL and revenue sharing is not public. Unless people tell you, you just have no idea how much money these guys are making. But I heard from two separate people that he got $750,000 to play at Xavier, which is just astronomical when you think. Granted, he was a starter at UNM. But that kid made $750,000 for 1 year of basketball. That's more money than most of us make in 20 years of working.
Yeah.
Or in our case, 40 years of working as a sports.
Thanks for depressing me again, Will.
Yeah.
This is not the fun conversation that we thought it was going to be. Now we're sitting there like, oh yeah, you got a taste of what the high life is, and you're like, oh God, we suck.
Yeah. I know. It's like, man, you guys come in with their custom haircuts, and like I have my wife cutting my hair, so that's just to save money. I do want to talk about the experience of being in Indianapolis for the Final Four. It was something I did not expect. It was an eye opener in some ways. I want to see if I can squeeze in the elevator story. I have to talk to Matt during our break to see if I can work that in there. Maybe kind of give you the PG version of the elevator story. But we're going to take a quick break. We'll hit that up, and then we'll finish it with some high school sports as we go. But we'll be right back.
I'm David. I work for Chevron, and this is my New Mexico. Chevron's been here for 100 years. My family could go back even further. All of my brothers work in energy.
I grew up in Farmington, New Mexico. There is a lot to love about New Mexico. We are raising our kids here.
We're here for the long term. I'm paving the way for my daughters so that they feel the same pride in New Mexico.
Here we go.
All right, we're back. Look, I've thought about it, James, the elevator story. I'm going to see if I can say this without offending anyone. It's just kind of a weird story, all right? So I was in Indianapolis for the NIT Final Four and the actual Final Four. I drove out there from New Mexico, which if you're inclined to do so, that's about 1,340 miles each way. So it's almost 18 hours, depending on how much traffic you hit. It depends on when you go. Like if you run through St. Louis like I did at rush hour, that's not good. But so it's a long drive. And on the way out there, I think I mentioned this during our podcast from Hinkle Fieldhouse, is I discovered Buc-ee's, which is a huge truck stop / whatever you call it. It's like a super clean, super Walmart, but for people who are traveling. And so they sell these brisket sandwiches and triple meat barbecue sandwiches, which is never. It doesn't sit well in your gut if you're driving for 18 hours. And then on top of that, I stopped in Tulsa, and when I did our podcast last week, and I ate at this it's called Ty's Burgers, and you can actually look this up. I'm sure they have a website or maybe, but they serve a chili cheeseburger. And I thought, oh, that's cool. A chili cheeseburger. Yeah, I'm from New Mexico. Let's give this a shot. It was actually hamburger with like Wolf's brand chili poured over the top of it. Oh man. I was hoping like a Laguna burger or something. So you combine the chili cheeseburger with all the Buc-ee's stuff, plus sitting in the car and you're sitting motionless for 18 hours. That's a lot. It's a lot for especially a senior citizen like myself. That's a lot to take. So I get to Indianapolis on Tuesday night, and it's super late. The next morning, they're handing out credentials at Lucas Oil Stadium, which is about a 15-mile drive from our hotel. I get up super early because the distribution starts at 8. I'm thinking rush hour traffic in Indianapolis. I better get there early. So I'm leaving 6:30, 6:45, come down the elevator in my hotel. And I'm going to tone this down. But yeah, all the Buc-ee's and all the chili cheese fries, it kind of caught up to me a little bit. And so I was on the elevator alone, and I chose. I'm thinking, I'm in a safe place. And so I did what a normal grown man does. When the chili cheese fries and the chili cheese stuff comes up, I left a gift behind in the elevator. And as I was walking out, a female patron of the hotel comes walking into the lobby, and she jumps on the elevator right where I was. And as the doors are shutting, all I could hear her say was, "Oh my God." the doors shut. She probably goes up to the 8th floor. She's trapped in this gas chamber of death. And I'm not lying, man. I thought about the whole time I was out there, I thought about what she experienced in that elevator. So whoever you are, wherever you are, yeah, sorry about that. That's the elevator story. So I went to my first Final Four ever. I got to go visit the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I got to see the Hinkle Fieldhouse, all that cool stuff.
No, but you're going to remember that moment you passed gas.
Oh yeah, yeah. I tell you, when my day comes and the last words I ever express, it might be the last thing I ever say might be like, "I'm sorry, lady," and then that's it.
That should be on your tombstone. Just oh my God.
Yeah. Oh my God. GAWWWD.
WD. Yeah. Just trailing off right there at the end.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's the elevator story, and I'm telling you, over the years, I'm going to fine tune that thing, and by the end, it's going to be this amazing. It might be like a short film. I could make a short movie out of it. So.
But by the end of this, you'll have knocked out 3 people with the stench because they got locked into that elevator. So.
Yeah. And so some of my more memorable experiences when I was out there is, for one, on Saturday during the actual Final Four, I barely saw any of that first game. The UConn Illinois game, because I was writing a story about just a column for Sunday paper, and I'd already written a story about Tomislav Buljan potentially leaving and his thoughts on the season. And so I barely saw the first game, and I had a chance to come out and watch part of the second game, Michigan and Arizona, which I was really looking forward to. I thought it'd be a great game. And that was my thought is, first of all, there's a ton of people there, and you can barely see the floor. It's even from the media seats, it's just a horrible vantage point because it's in a football stadium and it's got a very shallow grade to it. So you're looking through a ton of arms and heads and all that stuff to see a floor. You wind up watching the video scoreboard more than anything. And to people who pay $1,200, $2,000 for a seat. Thinking there's got to be a better way. I know the NCAA is making a ton of money, and I did some back of the napkin math. Is if each ticket costs around $1,500, 72,000 people, that's close to $100 million worth of ticket revenue right there. Not to mention,
and let's be honest, they're not all $1,200. I'll bet you, especially the closer you got, especially those courtside seats there.
Yeah.
Those are you're probably looking at 5 figures, maybe even 6.
Oh yeah,
to be able to sit on those.
Yeah, the most expensive seat I could find the day before the game was $22,000 for each seat, and it was about 15 to 20 rows up behind the benches, which is just then there's they had these little parlor suites near the floor where you could sit in a carpeted area, and they had a TV, and again, if you're sitting in there, you're probably paying $100,000 for this box, but you can't see the floor. You can see the floor a good 80 feet away, but between you and them, there's students, there's the band, there's the media, and there's all this other stuff. And it seems, I get it. It's a revenue stream for the NCAA, but it's almost too big. You strip away any sense of intimacy for the sake of making money.
And I think that's been I think that's perhaps been the biggest criticism of the NCAA, especially over the last 15 to 20 years, is that they've gone away from, these 15, 20,000 seat arenas because they want to make more money, especially in the first rounds and in the regional finals and semifinals and those rounds. And that's basically, UNM, shoot, it has now been 15 years since the NCAA tournament has been to the pit.
Yeah.
And that used to be a regular staple in the rotation. It was like every two or 3 years, you knew the men's tournament was going to be coming to UNM, whether it be for the first round or for the or for the West Regional. And now, it's like if you don't have a 50 to 60,000 seat arena, like they do in Arizona or like they do in Las Vegas or in LA, those are you can pretty much tell, what places they're going to be. They're going to be in, they'll probably be in LA. They'll probably be in Vegas. They'll probably be in Glendale, maybe Denver, but that's where it's at. UNM, the Huntsman Center, man. Remember when the Huntsman Center used to be in that rotation as well? You had like 7 or 8 places that you could go to, Spokane, and now those days are gone.
Yeah.
Those days are long gone. Again, not to sit here and and complain like a bunch of old men, want you to get off our lawn, but hey, it was great when you could, you could buy, you could purchase tickets for like $40, $50 and be able to watch, a regional final. One of my fondest memories that I ever had was, covering the 2001 West Regional when it was Purdue against Wisconsin, and I just happened to just walk up into the stands, just trying to talk to random Wisconsin fans and asking them, how long did it take you to get here? And I ran into one of the players' parents, and I wrote a feature story off of that. But it's like you're not going to get that now, that especially that intimacy, because in a place like the Pit, you get 17, 18,000 people. Back in the day, that's what it was. And that place got loud, and it was exciting, and and the atmosphere was great. I can imagine the atmosphere was all that great, even especially with with the way the Arizona Michigan game went. There was probably very little excitement other than the Michigan fans, maybe more so for the Illinois game. But I can't imagine that the atmosphere rivals anything that you've seen in the Pit or maybe some of these other smaller arenas that we've been to.
Yeah, the funny thing about that same regional is I was working for another publication at the time, and I was hired to write a story for the souvenir program for the Final Four that year. So whoever won that regional, I got full access to talk to these guys. And Wisconsin played Purdue, and I got to go in the locker room afterwards, which is just, I was just a horrible, horrible writer. I didn't know what I was doing, but it was a very cool experience. But Wisconsin is in this really tiny locker room in the Pit, and no one complained. No one had a problem with any of that because you had a chance to win, cut down the nets, to go to the Final Four.
Go to the Final Four. Yeah.
Yeah. No one's talking about your luxurious locker room with the buffet spread, or I had to walk up the stairs. Sorry, my dogs are running around. Live in a circus.
You can't win for losing right now, Will.
I'm telling you. But it was those days of playing in that intimate setting. You're right. Are unfortunately gone. I don't think they'll ever come back to UNM. But during a break during that Michigan, the Michigan Arizona game, which was just horribly boring. I
Sorry,
decided
Brian.
to go to the concession stand. So I went to the concession stand with my wife, who's sitting in the Yukon section. And it's funny, waiting to buy a hot dog, and this line is infinitely long, and the person doing the counter is just terrible. She took forever. And the guy in the line next to us, I looked over, I was like, that looks just like Emeka Okafor. And my wife looks over and goes, that is Emeka Okafor. But you know what? I felt justified in the sense that if Emeka Okafor can't cut to the front of the line, at least there's some.
At least it's not. Yeah. There's
know?
no privilege here.
It's like, first of all, Emeka, you look great, man. You aged really well. You look like you could still play. And second of all, the line's over there, buddy. So
yeah, get in line, but nobody's cutting it. Nobody's gonna let you cut in front of us, not even for an autograph, because it doesn't the value of your signature doesn't match anymore. So
that's right.
Doesn't play.
So and before the game, when the teams arrived in the innards of the arena, I'm trying to work my way into the media room. Yeah, and they stopped everybody down below. There's this long concrete tunnel that circles the entire arena. And they stopped everyone, and it was weirdly quiet. Security's like, everyone just stay back. The teams are arriving. And it was UConn's bus. Illinois had just gotten there. So Illinois is offloading their bus, or UConn is offloading their bus. Yeah. And the first guy to walk by was Dan Hurley. And so as he's walking by us, I gotta show you what he did. Our designer Eric Hedlund said that in Europe, if somebody gives you this signal, the two fingers, and they hold their palm close to their body, it's essentially them kind of.
They're flipping you off.
Yeah, they're flipping you off. Yeah, they're flipping you off. And so when Dan Hurley walked by, he kind of signaled this to us. He gave us that signal.
Oh, you didn't hit the play button, dude. Oh, there it is.
Right there.
It is. Yep.
Yeah, he's holding up the two fingers. It's like, wait a minute. Did Dan Hurley just flip us off in British style?
Oh, you thought he was cool like 2 days ago until last night, and then you realized.
Yeah.
Well, and here's the best part about it. He was a history teacher, so he probably knows that stuff. He knows exactly what he's doing.
He knew what he's doing.
And the rest of the media is like, oh, look at that. He gave us the peace sign. It's like, no, he didn't.
Oh, Dan, he's such a cool guy. He's down to earth with us. No, he didn't like any of us.
Yeah, he's exactly the jerk you thought he was before.
Yeah. So that kind of hurts my feelings a little bit. So I kind of wish he'd gotten on the elevator instead of that one woman. That would have been a better story. If Dan Hurley got it.
It would have been.
Yeah.
Except he would have come marching back out of that elevator and tried to beat the crap out of you, dude.
Yeah, by then I'd have just disappeared. Like,
like a fart in the wind.
That's how we do it in New Mexico, Dan, jerk. But
God bless chili cheeseburgers, right?
Yeah, that whole trip was pretty cool. Just a chance to see Hinkle Fieldhouse, where Butler plays, where they filmed Hoosiers. That was a cool experience. Very intimate setting at Butler, and it's one of the very few arenas I've ever been to where you can park and literally, I mean, you're right next to the front door to that place, and there's no giant concourse area. There's no public gathering space. It's just a gym with a hallway that circles the whole thing, and that's it. And it was, in some ways, it was a bummer that UNM lost, but at the same time, you know what? It didn't matter if they won the tournament or not. It was going to be a mass exodus of players, and it is what it is.
Yeah, well, we all kind of knew that. I mean, there was no way that wasn't going to happen. But still, it would have been nice to come. It would have been nice for you to come back with at least with some stories. Say, hey, wasn't that pretty cool? What happened there on Sunday? Instead, it was more like, this place is a ghost town once the Lobos left.
Yeah. And so I was charged with doing a fan fest story for our Saturday paper. So I was going to walk around downtown Indianapolis, which I did, looking for fans. And I was out there for literally 7 hours. I didn't see one New Mexico fan, not one.
Other than the one that you're married to.
No, yeah, she was wearing a Lobo alumni sweatshirt. She was doing that, but not one other person. And when she was sitting in the arena for the Final Four, people were kind of giving her the double take. It's like, what kind of dog is that on your hat? What is that? Is it a husky? Is that
They were like, North Carolina State, right? That's where you're from, right? You're from Carolina.
Well, I think they just assumed that since we're from New Mexico, we must be foreigners like Arizona, because it's like, oh,
Yeah.
you're rooting for Arizona. So there was that, but it it was a cool setting, just something fun to see. I had, just like when you went to the Indianapolis 500, it's like a bucket list thing that you can check off.
Exactly.
And do that.
Yep. It definitely is, man. And that's, kudos to you, man. And, it's funny you talk about the whole Arizona thing. And I was talking to Chris about that and trying to explain to her why Lobo fans hate Arizona fans. And she still doesn't get it.
Yeah.
It's like, why are you mad because of a coach? And it's like, you just don't get it.
Yeah.
You don't get it.
That's the crux of the living in this area, where some of those schools are so close together, you can practically taste it. But here, our rivals are like 6 hours away by car.
Yeah. So you got a long ways to really kind of generate that hate.
Yeah.
Gives you a lot of time to fixate on that.
So this week we get to transition to the end of the high school sports season, which is insane to think about, because here it is, April 7th, and 6 weeks from now, everything is done for us.
Yeah.
For the high school sports season. And one of the sports no one really ever talks about is powerlifting. I know the powerlifting state championships are this week, which is always kind of deflator when you walk in there, because these kids who are, a third of our age over there lifting heavy stuff that if I did that, I'd throw my back out. So just talk about the powerlifting championships you get to go see this week.
What's even more depressing is that you see some of these weight, the weight totals that some of these, like on the girls' side. I mean, these girls are like 110, 120 pound, weight divisions, because it's based on how much you weigh and everything. And they're lifting, and they're lifting a combined total of like 440 pounds. And I'm like, if I got to 300, I'd be happy. And I'm like, wow, that's depressing, to think that there are 17-year-old girls out there that can outlift me. But I'm like, yeah, but of course I didn't train for it like they did. I think if I did, I could maybe get there, in a year. They do it in like 4 months. So so that's what we're looking at on Friday and Saturday. It's interesting because the last 2 years, actually, the girls went on Friday and the boys were Saturday. Now they're flipping the script. The boys go Friday, girls are Saturday. And the boys are probably the one where we're going to see more opportunities for northern kids to maybe bring home individual medals. St. Michael's has a few guys. Pete Johnson, I think, has a shot. I believe he's in I believe it's 200 or 190 pound division. I'll have to look at it again. But St. Mike's has a few guys. Capital has it's funny. I'm going to be doing a story later this week for the preview of the competition. But Capital's star softball player, a girl named Brooklyn Cardenas, who leads 5A in home runs and RBIs right now, is their one participant from boys and girls for the powerlifting championships, and she's actually seated third in her weight class. So we're going to be that's going to be kind of the crux of the story, is that here's this stud softball player who has a chance to maybe bring home a state championship for Capital. So those are kind of the stories I'll be chasing, and hopefully we'll see what happens, and maybe there might be a couple of people that bring home state championship medals.
Yeah, you and I are at that age where if we get out of the car too fast, we could throw our shoulder out. So,
oh yeah, much less our backs. Yeah. It's like I can't tell you how long it takes me to like warm up in the morning, especially when we do our Thursday and Saturday morning basketballs. It's like before, it's like 5 minutes, I'm out. Now it's like 15, 20 minutes, and you really got to focus on like the knees and the hips. Yeah. All the the back. You really got to loosen yourself up before you get out there. And these kids, it's like, man, those kids could strain a muscle in their back. They'd be back out there in like 24 hours.
Well, when I was leaving the Michigan game at the Final Four last week, I just super windy. Of course, it's raining. It's terrible. But a guy in front of me, he's about 10, 15 feet in front of me, and the wind blows his hat off, and it's rolling right towards me. To my credit, I actually bent down and picked it up, but I swear my knees made like a pop.
Oh, the creaking, popping sound. You could hear it.
And I got up. I was like, I think I might have dislocated a kidney doing that too. I was like, I should have just let that stupid hat roll down the street.
It's like, and he's probably a younger guy than you, right? So he could afford to bend over for it and chase it.
Turns around, he's like, that was a fine baseball play. You must be a shortstop. It's like, Get out of here. Take your hat and punt it over the wall. I'm never doing that again. Yeah. So
See,
yeah,
you can't even handle a compliment, Will.
no. Grumpy old man. Yeah, it's so stupid weather in Indianapolis. Get me out of here. So yeah, looking forward to that. And then of course the end of high school baseball, track, soccer, or tennis, everything is all coming to a head. So just a lot of it's going to be a sprint to the finish line for us.
No, it surely is. And it's interesting, like District 2 AAA, they haven't started their district season yet, and they've got basically 4 weeks or 3 weeks actually to get it done. When you think about it, because their season I think ends the weekend of March 2nd or 3rd, if I remember correctly. I'll have to look at the schedule. Yeah, first and second. So the end of May. So they've got basically what are we looking at? 3 weeks to get in 12 games. And it's going to be a sprint to the finish for them. And then, of course, as we talked about before, once they're done with their season, whoever gets that top 4 seed out of 2 AAA, which we know one of them is going to, you get that dreaded 15, 16, 17 day wait period before you actually get out there and play a game again. So, welcome to spring, man. That's going to be a fun time for us.
Yeah, that's where you roll out your JV pitcher and just let him throw left-handed, even though he's right-handed, because you need to tank it. You need to tank in high school baseball so you can avoid getting a bye. That's the worst thing.
Bring your team manager out and just let him throw 7 innings if you can get to 7. I
mean, that's really the idea. You don't want to be a top 4 seed. It's the one sport where winning hurts. So
yeah, I know and I think we've talked about this before in a couple of other podcasts, but you look at basketball, you look at football, and you want that top 4 seed, at least in football, because you don't have to, you get a week off and you get to rest and heal up your body. And in basketball, I mean, it really doesn't matter. A top 4 seed just means you get a weaker opponent because everybody plays the all 4 rounds of that tournament. But in baseball, totally different story. You get a week and a half off. Coaches are dreading what happens when those guys get back out on the field.
Yeah. Well, looking forward to powerlifting this week, but I need a day to do all my laundry. That's kind of what I really need to do.
And you got a lot of laundry, man, because that was a week's worth.
Well, especially
I know you didn't really pack that much. Let's be honest.
The elevator outfit had to be put in a plastic bag in quarantine for the rest of the trip. So yeah,
I think you're gonna get it bronzed. Just have that hanging in your man cave there.
I think it bronzed itself that morning. I'm going to have to wash it in bleach and vinegar. So it's going to take a lot of effort to get those things clean. But yeah.
Yeah, that poor woman, she probably had to buy a lot of tomato juice to get that stench out of her.
By far, the best memory of the entire Final Four week was the elevator ride. I'll never forget that. So I'm glad to be back.
You need to write a column about that and just take us through that whole thing, like 700 words are just on the experience of farting in an enclosed space.
Just break it down, like sometimes you just gotta high five yourself, and I was high fiving myself that day. It was a good one. It was a victory.
Dude, you should even talk to a doctor and get him to break down how do farts happen and why
really
do they smell so bad.
Doc, if I take a chili cheeseburger from Ty's Burgers in Tulsa and I mix it with some Buc-ee's 3-meat brisket sandwiches, and then maybe throw in a couple of Cokes or something, and then 18 hours.
Eat a vegetable, man. Come on.
I'm sitting at a 45-degree angle, and all that stuff is just kind of sitting in there, stewing. Like it's like a giant crock pot, right, Doc? So.
Well, you're living the Elvis lifestyle, man. When they do your autopsy, there's gonna be like 15 pounds of compacted feces in your house.
Wow. And that's the way we wrap up this podcast.
Yeah, let's do it. Man. We're done.
Yeah. Dang. There we go. I think this podcast might have topped the Andrew Dunn one. This is right there, the last 4 minutes of this podcast.
Yeah, great. Now all doctors will ban me from it.
All right, folks. As always, if you have any story ideas, pitch them our way, and we'll take a look at them. But onward and upward for spring sports. Again, anything, just give us a shout. And thanks for tuning in.